Okay, politically, Lincoln really has changed his tone. He's changed his message. From the very early days, his views on slavery, where he thought that the government pretty much morally, he had all kinds of problems with it. He said it is wrong, it is evil, but the proper role of the government, probably just let it die off. He goes from that before he's president all the way through his House divided speech, his first inaugural speech, the Emancipation Proclamation, and then the Gettysburg Address. Finally, when we get to the second inaugural speech, he really wraps this up. As the Civil War, and again, keep in mind, he's reelected as president for a second time. And as the Civil War was winding down, again, he's reelected as president. He gave this speech while being sworn in for. Okay, we've talked a lot about Lincoln and how his views as far as the proper role of government regarding slavery, it really evolves quite a bit over time. His whole life, morally, he felt that slavery was wrong, but he always struggled with what should government do about it. We talked about his early views on slavery, his House divided speech when he was running for senator, the first inaugural speech when he's sworn in as president, then the Emancipation Proclamation during the war, and also the Gettysburg Address during the war. We're going to get now to the second inaugural speech of Abraham Lincoln. Now, as the Civil War was dying down, Lincoln, like I said, he was reelected as president. He gave the speech while being sworn in for the second time as president. And because the Emancipation Proclamation, he had already issued that during the war, Lincoln could not end the war with the South if they kept slavery. If the South wanted to surrender, this was no longer a negotiable factor. Slavery was going to end. By this time, Lincoln believed that slavery ultimately was the cause of the war. In this speech, Lincoln uses an incredible amount of imagery from the Bible, and he quotes several verses to emphasize his point. And many of these verses are very familiar, might be familiar to you, were familiar to his audience. Lincoln said that both the North and the South believed that God was on their side, and he felt that it was impossible for God to be on both sides at one time. And it was even possible that God was on neither side when it came to this issue. He called slavery a great sin of the nation, and that the country would have to pay a very, very steep price for allowing it to exist. And the cost that was going to be paid, and that was paid, was in the hundreds of thousands of dead soldiers who died while fighting during the Civil War. Now, we've got over 600,000 people are going to die during this war, so it is a tremendous, tremendous loss. I've mentioned before that the southern states, a full 25% of the men in the South died during this war. And if you add in the people that were not only killed, but those who were maimed and injured during this war, you have nearly one half of the southern men that were either killed or injured during this war. Now, within 5 weeks of the speech, Lincoln is going to be assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth, he's a Southerner who was upset by the outcome of the war. We may have a chance to talk about John Wilkes Booth later, but he was a famous actor of his day, and he was actually at this inaugural speech standing behind Lincoln when he gave this speech. And within 5 weeks, Lincoln will be shot and he will be killed.